Now, of all the recent Marvel Disney Plus series trailers to be released, the one I enjoyed the most, and now I'm subsequently most looking forward to, is actually Loki. The series looked entertaining, fun, added new genuine elements to the MCU with the Time Variance Authority, and had of course a charismatic, charming lead in Tom Hiddleston as the titular character, Loki. So if I enjoyed the trailer and I'm looking forward to this series, why am I making this video, titled Why the Loki series might be boring? Well, after watching the trailer and getting on with my life, it suddenly dawned on me, this character can't really go anywhere. So let me explain.
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
We all know the story of Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He began life as a villain, going up against Thor in his first film, and the Avengers in their first outing as a team. Loki did some pretty bad stuff, starting a war, trying to kill his father, and killing a fair few hundred people on Earth. You know, standard bad guy stuff. Although the whole Avengers business would later be explained away by saying Loki was under control by the Mind Stone, so you can't really hold him accountable to his actions.
With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey.
By the time Thor the Dark World rolled around, Loki was becoming more of an anti-hero, who did truly love his brother Thor and would help him for the sake of Asgard. However, Loki would always look out for his own needs, so was still willing to do general bad guy things. Eventually, Loki's arc completed with Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War becoming a less selfish character and becoming essentially a full-fledged hero, and willing to help Thor in his goals. Loki has an arc over the course of the 3 phases. It's not a particularly complex arc, but it is elevated through Tom Hiddleston's performance as the character, as well as his on-screen chemistry with Chris Hemsworth. Loki was a good character who I very much enjoyed. I always felt we learned enough about the character and he served well as a background character within the MCU. We learned just enough to give a damn about him, but he was never truly a main player within the MCU after Phase 2. What I'm trying to say is, Loki had an arc, and that arc is completely finished. He is dead, and there really isn't anything extra to add to the character. To be honest, I enjoyed the character most in Ragnarok, because his character had some true depth, instead of just a bad guy who killed people. You learn more about who Loki is, why he does what he does, and how deep down he wishes he didn't go down the route he did in the end. And perhaps it's time he accepts this is the path he has chosen. The Loki series basically picks up the character during the Avengers, having escaped in this timeline using the Space Stone. So essentially everything we learned about the character and his growth are no more, and we are back to square one with Loki, who was a fairly one-dimensional bad guy. You have taken the character you have built up over 4 or 5 films and stripped away all that work to revert back to where the character began in the first 2 films. Now people seem quite excited by this prospect, and if you are one of them, then great. But for me, Loki as a villain was pretty boring. It was one of the better villains of the early days of the MCU, but I feel that was mainly due to the other villains around him being so weak. I mean, who remembers Obadiah Stane, the Abomination? Alright, I'll be nice about Red Skull.
They're not for him.
Loki was more interesting than these villains because at least he had a connection to the main hero, and there was potential with the character. To be honest, he is a real bore fest in Thor the Dark World, and Taika Waititi managed to save the character in Ragnarok, becoming a far more layered character. But it felt like somewhat of a finale for Loki. He was redeemed and his arc was complete, which was probably why he was killed off in Infinity War. There was just nothing left to tell for the character. Now we have the Loki series where the character is at his villainous stage of his life, probably hell-bent on revenge against Asgard, you know, similarly to his early days in these films. You know, similarly to how he was in the early days in these films. My concern is that the character appears to be, again, somewhat of an anti-hero, with the lightheartedness established in the subsequent films carrying over into this alternate version of Loki. And whilst it does make the character far more interesting, and we the audience can connect and enjoy this characterization of Loki, I ask the question, where does the character go from here? As this is a series, I assume the character will go through some sort of arc, turning from a villain to a hero, as that is what a TV series is all about, a character's journey. Now a lot of people may argue that the series may just follow him as a villain, and the series will end with him as a villain, and whilst that is a possibility, and will be a far more interesting series, I can't see Loki going down that route. This is not particularly on Marvel brand. And this is what worries me about the character of Loki. If this series is just him going on various missions, learning more about himself and seeing the galaxy around him, I'm sure we will see the character become more of a good guy. And well, that's just basically what we have seen already. What differs with the Loki series from WandaVision and Falcon the Winter Soldier is all these characters haven't had completed arcs. I feel this is especially true for the characters Falcon and Wanda.
I don't even know who you are.
You will.
Whilst I do believe the Loki series will be a fun, enjoyable series which is going to add a lot of new elements to the MCU and expand so much more to the MCU on the whole, and of course I'll watch it, and I know I will enjoy it. My only concern as to why this series might be boring is the series can't really do anything character driven. We recently had The Mandalorian show how great character driven stories truly are, and how engrossing these moments in series can be. However, with the Loki series, I just can't see how anything new and interesting can be done with the character. His arc was completed in Ragnarok and the character was put to bed in Infinity War, and now we are jumping back in with this character and discounting all the development Loki has undergone and restarting it. Whilst it is interesting to go back to where it all started for the character, this doesn't really grab my attention. We have had his arc. It wasn't overly complex, but I still enjoyed it, and I just can't see where Marvel goes with this character to make it fun and interesting, and I worry the Loki series might be more about the spectacle than the actual character. Thank you for watching.